so I'm Theresa Fraser, and this is Susie Summers. I'm in Canada, she's in Britain, and we're Lowenfeld Trust members, and we're here. I have the privilege of chatting with Susie about Lowenfeld theories. And yeah, we could just begin wherever you want to begin.
Okay, well, Lowenfeld theories. There are two of her theories mainly to do with how the way she thought about how we develop as people from early babyhood, and how this development affects our thinking and how we think. And it's related to thinking and feeling. And I think understanding these theories can help us to think more widely maybe about how children make the sand trays and or mosaics if they're doing that. So it's helpful to have these theories in mind. Um, I think the theory of E is the one I'll start talking about. So it's called the theory of E. And this was a very interesting way of thinking about how energy is expressed in a person. And Lowenfeld thought that this energy is the energy of life, really, that's created at the moment of conception. And it's like electricity.
It just makes me smile and get like here over 100 years ago, she's saying these things that
Yeah.
people are really holding on to today, maybe calling it different names and using it in
Mhm.
different theories, but wow. Yeah.
So she also called it the kind of the life force. And if for anybody who's interested in kind of Chinese medicine or Tai Chi, which I am, it's about the chi in the body and the energy that's it's not just physical energy, it's psychological energy as well.
Right.
And how this is expressed in the body. And she said that some bodies are better adapted to expressing energy than others, and obviously some bodies have limitations, and some bodies, like in the athletes in the mosaic in the Olympics that we're seeing, they've got specialized bodies that are very good at expressing physical energy. Um, and so, but some of us are less able to express those things, and maybe we're better able to express psychological energy and emotional energy. So she had these theories, that the theory that E, the basic E, could be divided into physical and psychological energy. But the psychological could be further divided into emotional and sort of intellectual energy. So how the mind would think, really, that
Yes.
kind of thinking. And I think it's interesting because it's you can see this when you work with kids. Sometimes energies get blocked.
Right.
Emotional energy. Maybe the child isn't able to express how they're feeling. So that energy, once it's blocked, it disrupts the whole balance of that child. So anything that gets blocked, whether it's physical, intellectual, or or emotional,
Yeah.
the body's balance, the organism, I should say, the balance is disrupted.
Right.
And she refers this back to the principle of homeostasis, which is the force within us that tries to keep us balanced.
Right.
So in homeostasis operates in our physical bodies to balance out, chemicals, oxygen, physical functions. But she felt that this was very relevant also to psychological issues, that we need to try as humans to maintain a kind of balance.
Yeah.
So if we're thrown off balance
Right.
by something, let's say an accident or a bereavement or something, we try very hard to kind of get back to a sort of normal, comfortable place. Um, and this is important. Uh, but often we see children whose energy, the E, is blocked in some way, and often how they'll express this in a sand tray, for example, is they will have alleyways that are blocked as movements can't take place.
Right.
Um, and it's also to do with, yeah, it's movement, it's the body movement, it's but the things they're moving aren't able to move, And often after you've done some work with them, they'll be able to move. Things will be able to move. It'll be unblocked. The energy will be starting to unblock. You often see this with if they do water play as well, which I often used to do with them, or a funnel with a tube.
Yes,
They watch the sand flow, and then
yes.
often children whose energies were blocked, it wouldn't flow, or the water would be blocked, or they would do it on purpose to let you know, or you know, that there was some kind of a blockage in this flow of energy.
And
So
then
the therapy,
supervisees will ask, why are they doing that over and over and over again? And it's because they're trying to, they're working through the blocking to being unblocked.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Or sometimes you'll see flooding.
Yeah,
They'll flood the tray, say, with water. And I
yes,
always used to think about whether that was because this person was completely overwhelmed.
right,
Sometimes it was just, I mean, it might be other things, but that was one way of thinking about it. Is that person overwhelmed and they can't really function because they're overwhelmed, or it's flooded with emotions, or flooded with that kind of feeling?
yeah,
I've just got a few little notes of things I wanted to say about it. So yeah, so if you can't express your energy in a balanced way, you may start to have issues. Like, say, for example, somebody with an ADHD issue
yeah,
where they've got too much energy and it's
right,
all over the place, and it can't be direct. They find it very difficult to direct and balance it. And it's sort of all or nothing, and that kind of thing. So that would be where you could say, well, that person's E is definitely out of equilibrium, out of balance.
right,
And you might try and find ways in which that could be modified, or they could be helped to balance out those things. And on the other hand, when somebody's energy is not flowing, like they have depression, they're not able to move, their kind of things are very kind of low key. And this is another where talking about the personality in action. How does this person approach life?
right,
With energy, without energy, they don't care, they're not interested, lassitude, or they got yay with it all over the place, pouring up, or the sand tray, the toys are being emptied into the sand, da, 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 da. It's all out of control, and they can't balance
right.
the thing. I had a kid who he had a language disorder, and it was so interesting because he couldn't cope with the sort of vocabulary, but he took all the miniatures out of the trays and emptied them into the sand. So there was a huge pile of stuff.
Yep, yep.
He couldn't cope with it.
That
It's too
gets
much.
totally that I see that in supervision a lot where supervisees are like, it just looks like chaos. It doesn't look like what am I supposed to do?
Yeah,
Like, should I interrupt? And I always say stay with the process because it will shift if you're providing the safe environment, the non-judgmental
yeah,
therapeutic rapport, and
acceptance.
it will shift. And
Yeah,
then they come back and go, it did, and I don't know why. And it's like, well, it's because that's what that child is doing. It's the E. That's
and they
wow.
can see it maybe,
Yeah,
and they can maybe start to figure out a few things
yeah,
in the pile of chaos. Um, and even things like pouring sand all over it or whatever. But I mean, that's all an expression of this the life force, where it's going, what can they do with it, or is it all too much, or is it too little, or yeah. And I think the sensory thing about the sand and the water makes a huge. It's because it's three-dimensional. They have this multi-sensory thing. Um,
well, it's neurobiological, right? And that always strikes me too, that all the things that Dr. Lowenfeld and even my mentor Gisela said around sand tray being a neurobiological intervention,
yeah,
research is affirming that now. Over 100 years later, it's affirming it because the sensory input of the water and the sand
mm,
activates lower regions of the brain.
yeah.
So, wow.
So it's a very helpful way of thinking, I think,
Right.
when you're working with a child. I mean, even when we're talking about the first meeting, without your preconceptions, how does that child walk into the room?
Yeah.
Where is their energy?
Yeah.
I've had children who've been wrapped up in a coat with a hood on, they won't take it off, and they're completely everything's hidden.
Right.
And then maybe you can eventually get them to the point of moving into the room and looking at the equipment, the sand and all of that. And the day they take the coat off, it's a great day.
You know, like, oh, they're here. You mentioned another time we talked around children that don't like touching the sand per
Hmm.
se.
Hmm.
Um, did you in your practice like offer rice or lentils or water or
No, I
other
didn't actually. Well, water, yeah, we always had water. And often the water would be more okay. I think it is a sensory thing, and
Oh,
also
agreed.
some kids quite worried about dirt and getting dirty,
Yeah,
which they see the sticking sand on them as like dirt,
yeah,
they think.
it's true. Yeah,
So you kind of, yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, but I mean, sometimes they will avoid it for a while and then come around to it. Or they
yeah, and
take out, use the materials on the tabletop.
exactly. Yeah. And I know therapists that do offer alternatives. I've always been hesitant to because I worry about, offering like food for families that may have food security issues
Yeah.
and is that okay? But I find like you just said, if someone's not interested in the sand, they'll put the miniatures on the tabletop
Mhm.
or on the floor
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
gonna in there.
I I mean, I used to have big toys as well as small ones, so I wouldn't just have small things. We have big
Right,
ones.
right.
I mean, I remember, and this would be an interesting thinking about E. I had a wooden like Jenga tiles.
Yes.
You know the game of Jenga where you
You
stack
stack them
things
three
up.
by three. Yeah,
Well, there was a child, and all they wanted to do was to set them all up, standing individually, so that they could knock them over, and they would travel. You know, they'd see how many, because one would topple and the next one would topple.
right,
And this was what an illustration of the use of E. The energy would flow through all these tiles, and they would have, a short version, then they get longer and longer and longer. And it was that was all about flowing energy and then being able to actually relate to the whole process, really.
wow.
Yeah, that was amazing
All
because the whole
connected
room would be covered in these
in the
tiles.
tiles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I have a little guy who does dominoes that way.
yeah.
And the mom and I sent him home with some. The mom was like, really? Because she was really having a hard time with him. They were living with extended family, and that wasn't going really well. And but he loved the dominoes. So I said, I can't gift them to him for now, but I can certainly lend them
Mm,
because he would spend time like not playing with them as a domino game, but the like putting them all in
mhm.
order, right? And then pushing them down and then doing it again and then pushing them down. And it would became a real self-regulating activity for him.
I was just thinking maybe if he's in a difficult living situation, he can't move around much.
Right. Yeah,
So
exactly.
these can move and they don't take up too much space and all of
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can choose where to put them and what direction to put them in, and they can go up
Yeah.
and they can go down. Yeah. All connected to energy. You're right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that,
Wow.
allowing it to flow, having that ability. Yeah. So it's a good way of thinking, and thinking in terms of the physical, intellectual, and emotional aspects of the energy. I think is quite helpful, especially if a child is finding difficulty learning, say at school. Where's that energy going? If it's blocked, the learning cognitive energy is blocked.
Yes.
How is that all being balanced out, or what's going on there? You know, is it coming out as an extra physical energy or really shut down energy? Because that might be another option. You know, you close down if you can't, like you were saying about the kid who couldn't couldn't move around much at home. Yeah, so I
And
remember
it then
one.
begs the question, based on what you're saying to me, of how do we then create safe therapeutic spaces that are prepared to hold whatever energy comes in the room?
It's a good question. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about playroom rules now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Which is the big
Well, is
thing.
it really ever a is there a perfect answer? Probably not. Is there best practices? Probably. But then my mind goes to how do we make sure we're matching, being prepared for the energy of those that are coming to see us? because it could be different for every clinician.
Well, I'm just thinking now about Lowenfeld's own clinic where they had a water room
Oh, that's a beautiful room.
where the kids dressed up in raincoats and Wellingtons and hats and they had hoses that they could spray and they could draw on the walls and then they could spray them, and the energy was like really being used in a way.
Yeah,
They also had a garden at the clinic where they could go out and chop stuff up and
yeah,
uh, build things if that's what they wanted to do. So it was on a bigger scale. And then
yeah.
there was, of course, music, so drums or that kind of thing. But we
Uh,
don't, all
and
of us
these are
don't
all
have
things.
those. We
Oh,
can't
these
do
are
all of
all
that.
things that are happening like well, the music for sure,
Mm,
because we talk about drums being a neurobiological, like it's bilateral stimulation.
yeah,
But I think of like the offices, and I have a few in my practice, we have a few offices in different locations in Nova Scotia. And there'd be no way they'd let us have a water room.
no.
But a
I mean,
house,
the
I
best
would
you can hope
love.
for is a sink, maybe.
Yeah, I think. And the pictures that I've seen that have been shared with me of that clinic, like an old big white farmer sink with someone, kids standing in it, like, wow. Just
Yeah.
I have a colleague in Jody Hibbert is her name in Niagara Falls, and she has it's a house that's a clinic, which is my always been my dream, but they've got outside play spaces, not
Mm,
just for parents to wait with their children, but therapists can take them out. And at one of my first offices, I had a garden, a contained garden with a pond and a table so we could work outside. It was just beautiful to be
yeah.
to outside. Yeah.
I think, we can't expect in our current ways of working to do it all ourselves. And then maybe we have to think about liaising with schools, nurseries, so they can maybe provide more facilities for the children to express some of their physical needs, or,
Yes.
working with if we can see that, there's a really issue about learning. I remember one little girl I saw, and she just was at the school kept saying that she avoids all the time. She avoids everything that's like reading, and but she was fine. And when she was doing her playing, but she would. I thought, well, she's obviously got some kind of learning disability, and she was diagnosed with dyslexia in the end because her
Right.
avoidance was about the fact she knew she was going to fail,
Yeah, it's an unmet need.
and she knew she was going to fail, and so she avoided she had lots of very clever strategies for avoiding doing anything that was going to challenge her in a way that meant she would fail in the sight of her teachers.
Right.
So yeah, so I think we have to think of ourselves as part of a bigger enterprise that's working with
Great.
children and work with them too, so help the kids express some of these needs that they might have.
Yeah. It's so there recently I I mean it's not unusual. Every country is dealing with disastrous weather. But we had in Alberta, I don't know if you heard about it, Jasper, which is a very big
Yes,
tourist
the fire,
yeah, on fire. So I
terrible.
had with therapists here, and then based on the work of other play therapy scholars, had developed it was like a 6 session group, therapeutic group, play therapy group for kids exposed to natural disasters. And the first and the last module are here are resources to share with, educators, parents, other caregivers
Mhm.
around how to support the child's trauma symptoms and energy after experiencing those things. Because I agree with you, we have to, if we're just looking at what we're doing and not trying to provide support to other
Yeah.
people that the child is interacting with, then we're missing great opportunities.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
even if like parents, you can encourage them to do more actual physical activities with the kids, or if that's appropriate. Obviously, it may not be, but if they can, those
right.
kind of things. So it depends. Um, yeah, but I think you just have to remember the wider world and not just be focusing solely on your own
On your
work.
own.
Clinically, you have to go out there and liaise with the schools and the parents and
Right. Yeah. And absolutely.